Now let's have a look at the evolution of economics. That is, I'm pretty sure all of you have heard of the terms capitalism, socialism, mixed economy, etc. What is the meaning of all of these particular terminologies? Let's have a look at it. Now, many of the books or the literature that you're basically referring to, they've given you the whole discussion on the evolution of economics. Now, the importance of that for UPSC perspective is very little. All you need to understand is the basic differences as to what you mean by the concept of capitalism, how it is different from the concept of socialism, and how both of them are different from the concept of mixed economy, which most of the countries, for example, India, is actually following today. Now, in the idea of the capitalism, what are the important features? Okay, what I've given here is the differentiation or the features which will make these particular three types of economies different from one another. I've made the comparison as to based on the features in all the three systems of the economy. Let's try and understand these three systems are based on these particular features. Now, before understanding this, there is a concept called as four factors of production. We will again discuss that in detail after a couple of slides. As of now, simply understand this. The idea of a four factors of production is in any economy, for the production to take place, you need to have these particular four factors. Is it okay? In any of the economy, for the goods to be manufactured, for the production to take place, you should have these particular four factors. For example, let's say I want to manufacture a particular product in India. Now, to manufacture this particular product, what are the things I actually require? I will require human labor, I will require machineries, I will require raw material, I will require money to invest in manufacturing, I will require land on which I can place the manufacturing facility or build the manufacturing facility wherein these particular goods will be manufactured. So essentially what I'm trying to say here is, for any economic activity to take place, for any production to take place, there are resources which are available to you, and you will have to rearrange these particular resources or arrange these particular resources so as to get certain output. And these particular resources which are available to you will basically be divided into four factors. Hence, this is called as the four factors of production. What are these particular four factors? Land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. Is it okay? I'll repeat it again. It is important. Land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. These are the four factors of production. Now, some of you will basically say that, sir, if you are saying only four factors are required for production to take place, what about the raw material? You did not mention raw material. What about the machines? You did not mention the machines in the four factors. The argument here is, when I talk about the four factors, don't go literally by the names of these particular factors. For example, when I say capital, this is one of the four factors of production. Do not literally take the meaning of the term capital here. Generally, in layman terms, the term capital means money. Is it okay? Right? In layman terms, for a common man, capital essentially refers to money or the investment that is done. But in case of the four factors of production, the term capital refers to money that is invested or loans that are taken by companies, machines that are purchased, investment that has been done, etc. So the idea here is, although I'm using the terms land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship, do not literally take the meanings of each of them and restrict your understanding. You'll have to have a wider viewpoint. You'll have to have a wider understanding of these particular four factors of production, which we'll discuss. Now, what is the application of these particular four factors of production in the discussion between the capitalism, socialism, as well as a mixed economy? The application of that is the first very important feature. Who owns these particular factors of production? In case of the capitalism, it is the private sector, it is the private enterprises which will actually own these particular factors of production. In economies such as USA, which is very close to capitalism, right? You cannot have a complete capitalistic economy. There will be certain intervention of the government in the market or in the economy, but there are certain countries which are very closer to the idea of a capitalism. For example, USA. Right? In case of USA, majority of the goods or services are actually produced and supplied in the economy by the private sector enterprises. The land, the labor, capital, entrepreneurship, all of them are majorly owned by the private sector enterprises itself. Now, whenever you come across the term private and public, the difference is simply this. In terms of the public enterprises, these are owned by the government. Is it okay? Public enterprise or a public sector enterprise essentially refers to those entities wherein majority of the ownership lies with the government. Whereas the private sector entities are those where the private sector has the ownership. That is a basic difference here. So in case of the capitalism, the role of the government is very minimal. The government's role is only limited to facilitating the growth, providing the guidelines, providing an environment where the private sector can actually thrive. Why this is important? Generally, in case of the goods and services, we say that private sector is much more efficient in terms of utilization of the resources, much more efficient in terms of usage of technology, producing more and more goods and services, supplying them in the market, etc. And whenever you have a thriving private sector, generally we say that it creates a lot of employment or makes a lot of investment in the market. Goods and services are produced and you will have a virtuous cycle of a growth, or you will have contribution to growth majorly from the private sector. That is what we expect from the idea of a capitalism. Because the logic here is private sector knows where to invest. Private sector doesn't have to necessarily produce the goods for the social welfare. Rather, they will produce the goods for making more and more profits in the market. And when the private sector participation is very high, the utilization of the resources will be much more efficient. Contribution in terms of investment will be higher. Employment generation is there. Contribution to GDP is very high, etc. That is what we expect from the private sector participation. And moreover, the argument here is in a market, the role of the government should be very minimal because the buyer and the seller should come together, decide on the quantity as well as the pricing. There is this concept of invisible hand of the market, which was given by Adam Smith, who is the propounder of this idea of a capitalism, wherein he basically says that the invisible hand of the market, that is a price discovery mechanism, will determine what is the price of the product, at what quantity this should be supplied. And all of this is basically determined based on the concept of supply and demand forces in the market. Is it okay? Supply and demand forces in the market will determine what quantity will be supplied, who is going to produce it, how much the production will be there, at what prices will be sold, in which market it will be sold, etc. Right? All of these particular questions, right, will be answered in the concept of capitalism through the participation of the private sector. That is the basic idea for capitalism. So first, factors of production are owned by the private sector. Second, what is the role of the government? It is very minimal. The role of the government is very minimal in case of capitalism because the private sector participation is very, very high. Next, the market forces of supply and demand will determine what is the price of this particular commodity. At what price it will be sold in the market, it depends on how much is the supply, how much is the demand of these particular goods in the market. What about the competition? Because the private sector participation is very, very high here. Most of the goods and services are in complete capitalism or pure capitalism. It is the private sector which is participating. The competition will be very, very high. In each of the segments, in each of the sectors, industries, multiple private sector entities are present. These are competing with each other. So competition will be very, very high. Next, what is the motive of the capitalism? What is the motive of the private sector participation? The objective of the private sector participation will always to make or increase the profit. So in case of the capitalism, the ultimate goal for the private sector is to generate as much profits as much as possible. Okay? Is there exploitation of the resources? Is there exploitation of factors of production? Yes. Right? In case of capitalism, there will definitely be exploitation of the resources. For example, labor. Right? In case of the capitalism, one of the advantages associated with that is there is efficient utilization of the resources. Whatever resources are there, we want to utilize them and attain as much maximum output as possible. But having said so, in the process, what actually happens is, because the investment is done by the owners, the majority of the profits will get concentrated amongst the owners themselves. Is the logic okay? Imagine you are the owner of a company. You have invested, you own the assets in the company. So the profits of the company will belong to whom? The owner of the company. But in the process of maximizing your profits, you might end up paying very less amount of salaries or wages to the employees. So there's always this particular income inequality or wealth inequality that is created because of the idea of a capitalism. So is there an exploitation of the resources? Right? Are the owners exploiting the resources that are available in the market? Definitely yes. That is one of the biggest issues with respect to the idea of a capitalism. And what are the outcomes? What kind of outcomes can you expect from the idea of a capitalism? One, the investment from the private sector will be very, very high. Capital formation, which I have not discussed, I'll discuss this, do not worry. Capital formation will also be very high here. Private sector participation, very high. Competition, very high. And when there is a very high competition, what is the outcome of this? The customers will be able to get access to better products in the market. Quality will be much better. Usage of technology will be much better, etc. Having said so, are there any issues or concerns related to outcomes of the idea of a capitalism? Definitely yes. In case of capitalism, what you'll see is there is social stratification. There are wealth inequalities, income inequalities that are present in the economy. So, social strata, increasing income gap, etc., are the negative outcomes out of the idea of a capitalism. Now, as a reaction to capitalism, there is emergence of the concept of socialism. What happens in case of socialism? In case of socialism, what we generally say is the factors of production are collectively owned by the society. I'll repeat the statement here. The factors of production are collectively owned by the society. In essence, all the people put together are collectively owning the factors of production. Having said so, can people decide where to use these particular resources? No. Instead of the people coming together and deciding everything, what we generally have in case of socialism is there is presence of the government. A government or elected government will decide what kind of resources will be used, in which segment, what kind of goods shall be produced, in which market these are supposed to be sold, at what prices these are supposed to be sold. All of these particular decisions on behalf of the society are taken by the government. Is it okay? That is the concept of a socialism. And socialism is exactly opposite to the idea of the capitalism. Although I'm using the term socialism here, the extreme form of socialism will be referred as a communism, or there is something called as a communism, right? And that is exactly 180 degrees opposite to the concept of the capitalism. That is, if capitalism is on one end of the spectrum, the communism will exactly fall on the opposite end of the spectrum, right? If there is a role of the private sector in case of the capitalism, in case of communism, there is absolutely no role of the private sector. But just somewhere after this particular communism towards capitalism, you will get the idea of a socialism. In case of socialism, majority of the production is actually done by the government. Factors of production are owned by the government. And because I stated that there is a collective ownership of the factors of production by the society, labor is generally not supplied as one of the factors of production here. Having said so, what are the differences or what are the important features related to the idea of a socialism? Role of the government is maximum in case of socialism. The government will decide what should be produced, how much should be produced, at what price it should be sold, and where it should be sold. All these decisions are taken by the government. Right? What about the price? As already mentioned, the prices of these particular goods are determined by the government itself. What about the private sector? Role of the private sector is very, very, very minimal in case of socialism, absent in case of communism. What about the objective in case of the socialism? Here it is to obtain social welfare. Understand the logic here. In case of capitalism, private sector is present. Their motive will be to make huge amount of a profit. Whereas in case of socialism, the socialism doesn't run behind profits. It ensures that factors of production are used to produce goods and services which are required by the society, which are consumed by the society. So supply them as it is required by the society. So the social welfare will be the objective. Employment generation. Investment in those sectors which are having goods and services which are required by the society. That is the whole objective of a socialism. Next, is there exploitation of the resources? In case of socialism, generally we say no, there is no exploitation of the resources. Having said so, What are the outcomes? What are the outcomes of socialism? You will have huge representation of the government. Government generally sets up public sector enterprises which will produce these particular goods and services by consuming or by availing the factors of production. And so the role of the public sector enterprises in case of socialism will be very, very high. In case of capitalism, it is very, very marginal. And in pure capitalism, there is very little presence of the public sector, right? So in case of socialism, one, we will try to address the social welfare issue in case of socialism. Second, wage gaps are present. Understand the problem here? In case of the capitalism, income inequality is present. In case of socialism, yes, wage gaps are present. Means what? Some people are earning more, some people are earning less. So is there income inequality in case of socialism? Yes. But that is because of wage gaps. I'll repeat it. In case of capitalism, yes, right, there is income inequality. In case of socialism, yes, there is income inequality. But now you'll simply say, then what is the difference between socialism and capitalism, right? Now for that, understand the logic here very carefully. In case of capitalism, investment is done by, let's say, owner of the entity. So the profits will go to owner of the entity. Done. Whereas in case of the socialism, investment is done by whom? Government. Profits will go to whom? Government. Done. So the difference between the socialism and capitalism, one very important difference is, in case of capitalism, the factors of production, when they are used and profits are generated, profits will go to the owner. Here the owner is the government, and government is collective representation of the people. Is it okay? Right? Government is essentially nothing but it is representation of the people itself. So the ownership, or let's say the profits which will go to the owners will go to the government, because government owns the public sector enterprises. Having said so, even in case of socialism, what happens is, imagine there are two workers, A and B. Both of them, based on the skill set qualification, will be employed at two different positions. Let's assume B is the floor level worker. He is the person who is actually working on the floor, and A is his manager. So obviously, when A is the manager, B is the lowest level worker, can you expect both of them to be paid the same amount of salaries or wages for that matter? No, right? So in case of socialism, the income inequality is present, but that is because of the wage gaps which are present. Whereas in case of capitalism, because of the investment, because of the wages, because of ownership of assets, because of so many other factors, there is income inequality. Have you understand this? Right? There is a narrow reason, or you can simply say the reason for the income inequality in case of socialism is very narrow. Wage gaps is the reason. Whereas in case of capitalism, it could be because of wage gaps, investment difference, ownership of assets, ownership of other factors of production, etc. Right? So that is the very important difference between the capitalism as well as the socialism. What about the final one? Mixed economy. India, in the Industrial Policy Resolution of 1948, basically had an approach saying that India will follow a concept of mixed economy. Okay, India said we will follow mixed economy model. What do you mean by mixed economy? In case of the mixed economy, what we generally say is we will follow, or we will have an approach wherein there is a representation of the government in the economy, and there is also private sector participation. The factors of production will not be owned only by the government, nor only be owned by the private sector. You will have a mixture of both of them. In certain sectors, there is a public sector presentation, that is a representation of the government as well as the private sector. In certain sectors, government only will be represented, and there will be certain sectors where government will say, I will not participate, let only the private sector participate. Is the logic okay here? Right? In case of mixed economy, we will have a representation of both the government as well as the private sector present. And the factors of production will be owned in some of the sectors only by the government. In some sectors, both private sector as well as the government will be present. And in certain sectors, government says, I do not want to be participating in this, let only private sector participate. That kind of a ownership of asset division will take place in case of a mixed economy. And in case of India, we have been following a concept of a mixed economy. Now, what are the other important differences or features of the mixed economy? In case of mixed economy, you will see that government, apart from providing certain goods or services in the market by owning certain factors of production, will play a very important role in facilitating the growth of the private sector. Is it okay? Government will provide certain environment using which there is a promotion of the private sector in this particular economy. Next, who will determine the prices? Who is going to determine the prices here? Both in certain sectors, it will be the government. In certain other sectors, it will be private sector. And whenever you talk about the private sector, it will be supply and demand forces in the market that will be mainly driving the price determination in case of these particular goods and services which are supplied in the market. What about the competition? Yes, there will be high competition in this particular economy. Best example, Indian economy itself. Right? What about the motive? You will have both the motives present in case of mixed economy. In certain sectors where government is present, government might simply say, we want to attain social welfare outcomes. And in other sectors where private sector is present, their main goal will be to attain or achieve as much higher profits as possible. What about the exploitation of the resources? Because there is a role of the government here. Ideally, we say that in mixed economy, there should not be any exploitation of the resources. But again, this is ideal situation. And what are the outcomes? Right? In case of the mixed economy, prominence is given for participation of both the public sector enterprises as well as the private sector enterprises. In case of the private sector enterprises, we expect these enterprises to use the resources much more efficiently, provide the goods and services based on the competition in the market. And on the other hand, where government is present, it will also try to attain the social welfare objective by supplying certain goods and services in the market. So these are the three important modules of the economies which have been used across the globe over a period of time. Initially, we started with capitalism. As a reaction to capitalism, socialism emerged, and now most of the economies are basically following the concept of a mixed economy itself. Right? So this is how the evolution of economics has happened over a period of time. Now, next concept, the four factors of production that we have earlier just mentioned. What are these particular four factors of production? The four factors of production are land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. Is it okay? Land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. In short, you can remember the acronym LLC. Now, what is the importance of this? As already mentioned, for any economic activity to be started in an economy, you need to rearrange the resources. Is it okay? There are resources available, but you need to rearrange these particular resources in such a way that you can produce goods or services, sell them in the market. For example, in an Indian economy, there are resources available. Raw material is available, labor is available, land is available, machines are available, but you need someone to ensure that they will purchase all of these particular resources, rearrange them in such a way that goods or services can be produced, sold in the market, and economic activity or production activity will get kick-started in this particular economy. And that particular role of rearranging or putting together all of these particular resources in order to produce goods and services is undertaken by one of the factors of production, that is entrepreneurship. Done? Now, beyond this, right, what are the important points here? The factors of production basically refers to the inputs that are required for producing and supplying the goods in the economy. We've already seen the definition. What are the four factors of production? Again, these four are land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. But earlier I have told you, within these particular four factors of production, there are different concepts within this. Let's try and understand this. In case of a land, the literal meaning of the land is a piece of land. Is okay, a piece of the earth which can be used for production process. You can build a manufacturing facility, start producing goods and services within this particular manufacturing facility. But that will be a narrow understanding of the factor of production of land. Right? A wider understanding will be land as a factor of production will refer to any natural resource that is available, which is not man-made. I can understand this. Any natural resources that is available to you will become part of a factor of production called as land. Now have a look at this. The minerals that are available, let's say the ore of iron, ore of aluminum, etc. All of these, right, are basically an example of mineral resources that are available. These are available naturally. We have not manufactured them. These are available naturally. Right? Land used for infrastructure development, agriculture, land that is used for agriculture output. All of these are basically the components of the factor of production, land. Done? And on the other hand, right, you also have the second factor of production, that is labor. And in case of a labor, you could have the labor in case of urban area, labor in case of a rural area, etc. Is it okay? And within this particular, the labor that is available, the labor could be semi-skilled, skilled, informal labor, non-skilled labor, etc. Right? So the first factor of production is land. Second factor of production is labor. Third factor of production is capital. As earlier mentioned, if a particular company takes a loan to purchase a machine, that becomes part of the capital, because on this particular capital, the company has to pay a certain interest to the lender. But a broader meaning, broader understanding of the capital would be anything that has been created by the man and which is used for the production process. For example, let's say a manufacturing facility. For example, roads that are constructed, right? Machines that are manufactured, etc. And the difference between the land and the capital here is, in case of the land, I clearly stated that anything that is naturally available to you, a natural resource, will be classified under the concept of a land. And anything that is man-made, which is used for the production process, such as construction of a road, manufacturing facility, buildings, bridges, tunnels, etc. All of them will become part of this particular concept of a capital. Done? So capital examples are machines, infrastructure that is developed for, let's say, used for manufacturing or supplying or transportation process, etc. And finally, entrepreneurship. You need to have someone who will put together all the three factors of production. You need to have, right, a owner of this particular assets. Right? This particular concept is called as an entrepreneurship. The idea of entrepreneurship can be in the form of self-employment, as well as right, the people who are starting business, right? Newer companies which are started are also part of the concept of entrepreneurship itself. So these are the four factors of production. Now, rather than sticking to only this understanding of four factors of production, I'll give you another additional concept here. Just understand this. We'll be using this again when I discuss the concept of the national income aggregates. That is, these particular four factors of production will have a certain expenditure associated with the company, and also revenue generated because of these particular four factors of production in the economy. That is, let's take a very simple example here. Here is a house. Okay. This particular house has a supplied, let's say, labor, and labor is a type of factors of production, one of the factors of production. Now, when this particular labor is supplied, and here is the company which has used this particular labor, right? This particular factor of production will have two sides here. That is, because the household has supplied labor, the house becomes the service provider. I will repeat this. Do not get confused here. Follow this very carefully. The house has supplied labor. That is, let's say, a worker to the company. And this particular worker brings a certain amount of income to the house. Why? The house becomes a service provider. Is it okay? It becomes a service provider or provider of factor of production. And because it is providing certain services or providing certain factor of production, it has to make certain earnings. It has to generate certain income because of this. Right? Labor supplier or service provider, which is the house here, will make certain returns or will earn some amount based on the supply of the labor that is done. And this particular earnings that I'm referring to is basically nothing but wages. Is it okay? It is basically nothing but wages. Although I've written the term salary, income, etc. here, in economic books, they'll simply use the term wages here. Okay. So the house supplies the labor, and because it has become a service provider here or provider of a factor of production, it will earn a certain income. And because it has provided factor of production, earns an income on that, it is called as a factor income. Is it okay? It is referred to as factor income. Is it okay? Do not get confused here. Let me repeat it again so that you understand it very clearly. House supplies labor to company, and the company which has used the labor will pay wages to the house. This particular wage is nothing but a factor income. Why do we call this as a factor income? Because the house has supplied a factor of production. It's a factor. It is one of the inputs which has been supplied by the house. And because house has supplied a factor of production, it will earn some amount on this, hence referred to as factor income. Done? So there are four factors of production which are supplied by different people in the economy. Right? For example, somebody will supply capital to the company, right? Somebody will provide loans to the company. Somebody will make investment in purchasing a machine in the company. Somebody will provide land to the company, right? So in all of these particular four factors of production, because these are supplied, because these are provided, the company will have to pay a certain amount to the one who has supplied or provided these particular factors of production. For example, imagine you are the owner of the company. I've given a land on a rent to you or on lease to you. And when you have taken this particular land, you will have to pay a certain amount to me. Is the logic okay? Right? Can I provide land on a rent to you where you will manufacture the goods and you will not pay anything to me? Is that possible? No, that is not possible. Because you are using a resource which is owned by me, you will have to pay a certain amount to me. I will supply raw materials to you. Don't you think you will have to pay a certain amount to me? I understand this. Right? So all of these particular factors of production which are used by the company, I can understand this. These particular factors of production are used by the company and are owned by someone else in the market or in the economy. And when this particular company uses these particular factors of production, it will have to pay a certain amount of money for having used these particular factors of production. And because this is the income that is generated by the service providers after supplying or after providing the factors of production, is it okay? These can also be referred to as factor incomes. Right? For example, a house will supply labor to the company. Company will pay wages. This wage can be referred as factor income. Right? House will provide a loan to a particular company. Company will pay interest on this. Right? This interest is on account of loan being provided. Because the house provides a loan or bank provides a loan to a company, company pays interest on this. Right? Hence, interest also becomes a factor income. Right? Owner of the land has provided land on lease or let's say rent to a particular company. The company will pay rent on this. Right? It will pay certain money in the form of rent. Rent becomes a factor income. And finally, you are the owner of the company. Is it okay? Right? Imagine you are the owner of the company. Your name is XYZ. Just understand this because most of you will get confused with the fourth factor of production. That is entrepreneurship. Let me give a very basic idea here. Imagine your name is XYZ. Again, imagine XYZ. And you have opened a company ABC. So who has opened the company ABC? You. Your name is XYZ. Who has invested in this particular company ABC? You have invested. Who owns the machines that are there in the company ABC? You own the machines. So you are the owner of the company. In a nutshell, what I'm trying to say here is you are the owner of the company. You have put together the remaining three factors of production. Goods or services are manufactured or produced, sold in the market. Company has generated profit. Now, these particular profits should belong to whom? Right? The company ABC has made profit. But the profits of the company belong to whom? The profits of the company will belong to owner of the company. Is it okay? The profits of the company belong to owner of the company. And who is the owner? You are the owner, right? So the profits will be taken away from company's account and will be given to the owner. That is the reason the fourth one I've written, right? The entrepreneurship profit is a cost for the company. It is an expenditure incurred by the company. And on the other hand, the same profit will be the income generated by the owner. Right? Profit also becomes part of the factor income. Even if now you are concerned as to how this can be done, right? It is confusing, sir. Let me take a very simple example, very crude example nevertheless. Imagine here is an auto. I know it doesn't look like an auto. Let's assume it is an auto. Here is an auto and the person ABC owns this particular auto. Is it okay? So investment in the auto is done by whom? ABC. So this auto makes certain profits. Is it okay? The auto makes certain profits, right? Running the auto, let's say, right? This particular owner has put in petrol of 100 rupee, but by moving the passengers from point A to point B, he has earned 150 rupees. So investment done by the owner is 100 and earning is 150. So the auto has made a profit of 50 rupees. But this particular 50 rupee profit belongs to whom? The owner of the auto, right? So that is the basic idea, right? The entrepreneur will provide his services. He will put together the land, labor, capital, and he will ensure that there is a production of goods and services which are sold in the market. Profits are generated. So the profits of the company should belong to whom? Should belong to entrepreneur. Done? So there are four factors of production: land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship. And these particular four factors of production will have a factor incomes generated, right, to those particular people or those households who are going to provide these particular factors of production to the company. And anything that is paid by the company becomes expenditure for the company. Some of you will be worried about this side of the table. You'll be saying, sir, how can you say this is a cost for the company? Let's take a very simple example, right? Imagine you're the owner of the company. You have set up one company and I'm working in that particular company. At the end of the day, you will pay 200 rupees. The company pays me 200 rupees. So I will receive 200 rupees. It becomes a revenue, an income for me. Is the logic okay? I will receive 200 rupees from you. It becomes income for me. But you have paid, that is the company has paid 200 rupees for me. Don't you think that 200 rupees is a cost or the expenditure incurred by the company? Done? In the same way, company has taken certain land or let's say manufacturing facility on lease. It will pay a certain amount on that in the form of rent. So when I say company pays the amount, right, it literally means it is an expenditure for the company or the cost for the company. And on the other hand, if I am owning that particular building, I will receive the rent and the rent becomes income for me. Have you understand this? Right? So for the service provider, it becomes an income, factor income. But for the company, it is an expenditure, cost incurred by the company. Done? So this is the basic idea of four factors of production and how do you understand these particular four factors of production in this particular context. Now, let's have a discussion on next concept of opportunity cost. First and foremost, idea of opportunity cost originates because there is scarcity of resources. Is it okay? Because there is a scarcity of resources, there is this concept of opportunity cost. Now you will simply ask me, sir, what do you mean by opportunity cost? First tell us that. Yes, let me discuss that. But before that, let's take an example. We'll connect it to concept of opportunity cost. Imagine you have 100 rupees. Okay, imagine you have 100. Now if you ask me, sir, why 100? I'll assume I have 1 lakh rupees. Very good, assume it. But let's take a simple example here. Imagine you have 100 rupee. That is the only amount you have to invest in the market. Now, to keep this particular 100 rupee in the form of fixed deposit, that is one option that is available to you. Or you can invest this particular 100 rupee in the stock market. Is the logic okay? Now, you have only 100. Using this 100, either you can invest in the stock market or you can keep fixed deposit. You cannot do both of them because there is a limitation of the resources, right? The resources are limited. And please remember this, the bedrock of opportunity cost or the basic idea of opportunity cost originates because there is a scarcity of resources. If there is no scarcity, then there is no question of opportunity cost because you'll simply say, sir, I have sufficient resources. I will invest in the stock market also. I'll keep the fixed deposit also. But please understand, this does not take place in real economy. That is, availability of sufficient resources is not a situation in the real economy. We discuss economics because there is a scarcity of resources. Right? For example, a company, right, wants to manufacture a product. Don't you think the amount that they have to purchase raw materials is limited? The amount of human labor that they can afford is limited. Amount of machines that they can use to manufacture the goods is limited. So there is always a scarcity of resource in the real life. And all of us basically follow the concept of opportunity cost because there is a scarcity of resource. Right? For example, right, many of you, or let's say some of you, or none of you, but somebody else in the economy might be having a scarcity of resource. So he might be thinking, should I go by a public transportation today? Or should I opt for an Ola? Or should I use a car where the cost of the petrol is very high? So because there's a scarcity of resource, he might simply say, okay, right, using a car would be much more costlier compared to public transportation. So let me use the public transportation today. So the argument here is the bedrock of opportunity cost or the basic origin of opportunity cost happens because there's a scarcity of resource. Now what happens here is because there is a limited amount of resources available with you, you might simply decide, okay, let me go with the fixed deposit. Let me keep my money in the fixed deposit and forego, right, the option of investment in, let's say, stock market. But what if I were to tell you, after 1 year, on your fixed deposit, you will earn, let's say, 6% rate of interest. Okay? On your fixed deposit, you will earn 6% rate of interest. But if you had invested same 100 rupee in case of stock or let's say share of a company, you would have purchased the share at 100 rupee. After 1 year, if you had sold this particular share in the market, you would have earned, let's say 108 rupees. In essence, I'm trying to say that after 1 year, your returns would have been 8% here. I can understand the logic here. By investing in the fixed deposit, you earned 6%. But if you had invested in the stock market, purchased and sold a particular share of a company, you have earned 8% rate of interest. So by choosing one option over another option, either you will gain certain amount or you will be losing certain amount. Is the logic okay here? What is the opportunity cost? Opportunity cost is basically the concept wherein a person has to choose one option and forego the benefit that they would have derived by choosing other option. Is the logic okay? I'll repeat it again. Opportunity cost is a concept which has originated because there's a scarcity of resource and wherein person is forced to choose one option over all the other available option, thereby foregoing benefits that they would have arrived or derived by choosing other next best available option. And that is the basic idea of an opportunity cost. And whenever there is an opportunity cost, please understand this. We'll generally say that opportunity cost, I'll use a short form here, can be positive, can be negative. Okay, opportunity cost can be positive or can be negative. And the simplest representation of opportunity cost will be return from option A minus return from option B. Although different books will give it different formulas, do not worry about the formula, do not run behind the formula. But the basic idea here is when you have a negative opportunity cost, remember this, it simply means you are losing in the transaction. Let me give an example, you'll understand it. And when you have a positive opportunity cost, you are gaining by choosing this particular decision or making this particular decision. Meaning what? Let's take the same example here. You kept your money in a fixed deposit. You earned a 6% rate of interest. Your decision was to keep the money in the fixed deposit and after 1 year, you will earn 6% rate of interest. Right? So you kept 100. After 1 year, this became how much? 106 rupees. But by choosing to keep money in fixed deposit, you chose not to invest in the stock market. Is the logic okay? Either of the one is possible. You chose fixed deposit, you foregone or you basically left off making an investment in the stock market. You said, no, not possible now, only 100, I'll keep it in FD. But by foregoing a decision to invest in the stock market, you are losing an opportunity to earn 8% rate of interest. So by investing in FD, you earned 6%, good, 6% rate of interest. But by choosing to invest in FD, you have foregone a decision wherein you could have earned extra amount, right? That is, you could have earned 8% or 8 rupee rate of interest. But instead of that, you decide to invest in FD and you earned 6% rate of interest on this. If I substitute that here, let's say 6% is your right rate of interest that you have earned and 8% that you would have earned if you had made an investment in the stock market. So whenever your opportunity cost is negative, simply remember this, whenever your opportunity cost is negative, it essentially means you are losing based on your decision making. Or else you could have earned 8%, but you have earned 6%. So you have lost, right, extra earnings of 2%. And this is a negative opportunity cost. And in the context of a positive opportunity cost, you can simply, right, remember this. If you have a positive opportunity cost, it essentially means that you are gaining from this particular decision making. That is, what if rather than this, in case of the stock market, the returns were, let's say, 3%. Is it okay? What if rather than this, the returns in the stock market was 3%? In such cases, you have made a decision to invest in the fixed deposit. You have earned 6 rupees, but if you had made a decision to invest in the stock market, you would have earned only 3 rupees. So there is a positive opportunity cost. Is it okay? The opportunity cost in this case is positive. And in case of a positive opportunity cost, it simply means you are gaining from this particular decision making. Done? So this is a discussion with respect to opportunity cost. Next, let's have a discussion with respect to law of demand and the law of supply. Now, before starting the discussion here, one very important point. Whenever I refer to law of demand, please understand, I'm talking from the customer or the consumer side in the market. Is it okay? I'm talking from the consumer side in the market. Because in the market, there are two sides. One is a seller or supplier and the second one is a customer or a consumer. Is it okay? So understand this. Whenever I'm discussing law of a demand, I'll be discussing from the consumer side of the transaction. And when I'm talking law of a supply, I'll be discussing from the producer or seller or a supplier side in the market. That is one very important point you'll have to remember. Now, before discussing law of demand, understand the logic here. In the market, whenever we decide to demand or consume a particular good, there are certain factors based on which we will decide whether to consume or purchase this good or not. For example, let's take mobile phone here. Okay, let's take an example. Mobile phone. Okay, in the context of mobile phone, imagine you want to purchase a mobile phone. Now, what are the different factors that you will consider before deciding to purchase a mobile phone, and specifically within that, a particular type of a mobile phone? That is a particular mobile itself. Now, what are the factors? One you will consider is your income. Okay, one factor that you will consider is your income. Don't you think before deciding to buying a particular mobile phone, you will have to look at your wallet, your bank balance, etc. You'll have to be very careful for a simple reason. You cannot have a salary of, let's say, 1 lakh rupees and decide to purchase a mobile phone of, let's say, 2 lakh or 3 lakh rupees. Right? It doesn't make sense for a simple reason. Economically speaking, again, I'm not saying you should not purchase such a mobile phone. If you want to purchase it, purchase it. But the argument here is the decision economical or not? Right? Because I'm saying if your salary is 1 lakh, you should not purchase a mobile phone of 3 lakh. That doesn't mean that nobody purchases in the market. But the logical argument here is before deciding that, you will definitely consider what is your income. Because most of us Indians who belong to, let's say, middle class households, we are very conscious with respect to what we are going to purchase in the market and what impact it will have on the income. Right? Or that is, how much income do I have? And out of this income, how much money do I have to spend on this particular product? That is one factor that we will have to consider. Second very important factor is, what is the price of the commodity? What is the price of the product? Don't you think that will also be very, very important? And in fact, understand this. In fact, this is the factor which is the most important factor, or which will have the highest influence on whether we will end up purchasing the good or not. Have you understand this? There are different factors, right? One is income, second one is price, third one is a preference, and the fourth one is the price of the related goods. Right? There are different factors like this. But out of all of these particular factors, one factor which will have the maximum influence on whether we will purchase the product or not is the price of the commodity. And most of the times it is the price of the commodity which will either promote more and more purchases of a particular product or hinder more purchases of a particular product. Right? So second one, or the second factor that we'll consider is, what is the price of the mobile phone? Third one, price of the related goods. Okay. Now, before discussing how this is important, let me give a very brief idea of the concept of related goods. Now, in simple terms, whenever you refer to the term related goods, essentially means these are the goods which will have some connection with each other. For example, let me take a simple example so that you understand. Mobile phone and charger. Don't you think both are connected? Both are related? Definitely yes. Right? If you want to purchase a mobile phone, along with that, you will have to purchase a charger. Now, don't say, sir, what if the same charger which is required is already available in the household? Essentially, you already purchased a charger. Have you understand the logic here? Right? Mobile phone and charger. Don't you think these are related goods? Definitely yes. Tea and milk, or let's say tea and sugar, both are related? Yes. Car and fuel, both are related? Yes, definitely yes. Right? So in the market, there are certain goods which are related like this. These set of goods are referred to as related goods. And in case of the related goods, again, you will have two classifications. Okay. In case of related goods, there are two classifications again here. One set is referred to as substitute goods. Okay. And the second one is referred to as complementary goods. One is a substitute good and the second one is complementary good. What is the basic idea here? In case of the substitute goods, these are set of goods which on consumption individually will give you same satisfaction or utility. I will repeat it again here. Substitute goods are those set of goods which are consumed individually and they will give you same amount of satisfaction or utility. For example, tea or coffee. Is it okay? Both of them are substitute goods. Either you will consume tea or you will consume coffee. None of us will combine both tea and coffee and consume it. Again, if there are some people who are doing it, right, don't worry about them. But essentially the idea is either you consume tea or you will substitute that with the consumption of a coffee. Or else, let me give you another example. Mobile phones. There are different mobile phones in the market produced by different manufacturers. You will purchase one of these particular mobile phones. Right? I can understand this. Nokia, Samsung, Xiaomi, Apple, etc. There are umpteen number of mobile brands in the market. But you will ultimately decide to purchase, let's say, Samsung mobile phone or an Apple mobile phone. You will not purchase one each of all of the products, at least not in the middle class household. Right? The argument here is because they provide the same satisfaction to us, because they provide the same utility to us, we will either purchase one phone of this company or another phone from another company. Right? We will not purchase one of this, one of this, one of this, one of this. We will not purchase, let's say, 7 to 8 mobile phones, right, at one shot in the market like this. Right? So again, I'm talking from the household perspective. Don't say, sir, what if it is a mobile company? What if, right, he is a person who is involved in, right, mobile recharges? It's a commercial entity. Do not worry about the commercial enterprise here. Look at from the household perspective, more than sufficient. Is the logic okay? Or else let me give another example. You want to purchase a car. There are different types of cars available in the market. Different types of producers who are supplying cars in the market. Will you purchase one each from all the producers? No. You will go to market. First, you will go to the let's say showroom of company A, then to showroom of company B, C, D. Then you will search in the web which is good, etc. You will collect a lot of information and then you will decide, okay, I want to purchase this car of this company of this particular make. And that is the basic idea for substitute goods. Is it okay? So substitute goods are those set of goods, right, which are consumed individually will give you same amount of satisfaction. What about the complementary goods? The complementary goods are those set of goods which are consumed in combination will give you satisfaction. Is it okay? Will give you certain utility. For example, mobile phone and charger. Is it okay? Mobile phone and a charger. These are complementary goods. You will have to consume them in combination. If you purchase only mobile phone, from what you will charge it? Using what you will charge it? You will have to have a charger. If you purchase only charger, what is the point of purchasing that without having a mobile phone? Same way, car and fuel. Is it okay? Fuel could be electricity, fuel could be petrol or diesel here. Right? Car and fuels are complementary goods. Right? So there are set of goods, or for that matter, another example, printer and ink. Is it okay? Printer and ink. These are also, right, consumed in combination. So there are a set of goods which are consumed in combination. Right? These are called as complementary goods. Right? So substitutes, individual consumption, complementary goods consumed in combination. These are referred to as related goods. And whenever there is a variation in the price of the related goods, definitely yes, it will have an effect on the demand for the goods and services. Let's assume, for example, mobile phones. You want to purchase a mobile phone, and during your investigation or during your research, you come to know that same brand, or let's say same or a similar type of a mobile phone with the same features of a different company, the price of that particular phone has dropped very recently. Is it okay? Earlier, similar mobile phones, 4G connection or let's say 5G connection, dual SIM, right, 128 GB storage, etc. Similar type of a mobile phone, different brands. But now you have come to know that, right, the second type of a mobile phone, right, of a different company, the price of that has come down. Now, because the price has come down, don't you think that will become attractive for you, right? The second mobile phone will become much more attractive for you because you are going to get same or similar features, but the price is much, much lower. So whenever you talk of related goods, right, will it have an impact on the consumer buying behavior in the market? Definitely is. Or else, let me give you another example. With the fuel prices rising up, and imagine they continue to rise and stick to, let's say, 110 rupees a liter. Don't you think that will have certain impact on consumption of two-wheelers as well as four-wheelers in the Indian market? Definitely yes. So whenever you have related goods, the price of the related goods will definitely have an impact on what product we are going to purchase in the market. And finally, the taste and preference of the consumer. The taste as well as the preference. For example, would I want to purchase a mobile phone with the tactical keys, that is a physical keys or smartphone? Would I want to purchase a mobile phone with 3G, 4G or 5G capability? Would I want to purchase a mobile phone which is having an expandable memory? All of these particular taste or my preferences will definitely have an impact on what kind of mobile phone I'm going to purchase in the market. So understand the logic here. Before discussing the law of demand, we are basically looking at certain features or certain factors which will definitely have an impact on demand for goods or services in the market. Having understood this, having looked at the factors now, let's have a look at law of demand. What does law of demand states? Ceteris paribus, or if all the factors remain unchanged. What is the meaning of this? There are various factors which are going to have an impact on the goods and services that you're going to consume, right? There are factors such as price of the product, price of the related goods, taste and preference, and income of the consumer or income of the buyer. These are some of the factors which will have an impact on what good you will purchase or consume in the market. I'm saying that if you keep these particular factors unchanged, that is, the related goods, price doesn't change. The taste and preference doesn't change. Income of the consumer or a buyer doesn't change. If you keep these particular factors unchanged and you change only one factor, that is a price. Okay, you change only one factor, that is price. And whenever you change this particular factor, that is price, and keep all the other factors unchanged, the demand for goods or services in the market is also going to change. Is it okay? I'll repeat the statement here. Law of demand states that if all the other factors remain unchanged or ceteris paribus, the price and the demand of the goods are negatively related. That is, when the price changes, demand for the good will also change. Right? Why does it happen? We'll have a look at it later. But the argument here is when the price changes, the demand should also change. Right? And this particular relation between the price as well as the demand for the good are negatively related. Means what? When the price rises up like this, demand will fall. And when price falls like this, the demand for the good will rise. Is it okay? This is a basic idea of a negative relation. That is, a price as well as the demand are moving in opposite direction. I can understand this. Both are moving in opposite direction. If price falls, demand rises. And if price rises, demand falls. This is a negative relation that exists between price and demand as exhibited in the case of a law of demand. But important point here, you will have to keep other factors which will determine the demand unchanged. You will have to keep these particular factors unchanged and only change the price, and only then you will see this kind of a relation exhibited between price as well as the demand for a commodity. Now the question is, why does this happen? Why is that when price rises, demand falls? And why is that when price falls, demand rises? And is it observed in all the cases? Right? Answer to the first question is this. Understand this. This curve which I've drawn is called as a demand curve. Okay, this particular line or a graphical representation is a demand curve. And understand the logic here. How the demand curve is drawn. I'll answer to both the questions. Do not worry. How the demand curve is drawn. We are taking the demand for particular good in the market from the overall economy at different price levels. Let's say hypothetically, I'll write price and the demand here. I'll use the short forms. Instead of writing full price, I'll simply write P here. And the demand I'll represent by D. Imagine when the price is 10 rupee, demand for the goods, right, let's say is 40 units. When the price increases to, let's say, 15 rupees, demand falls down to, right, 34 units. Price further increases to 20 rupees. Demand further plummets to 30 units. Price, right, increases to 24 rupees. Demand further plummets to, let's say, 21 units. Again, I'm just giving you arbitrary number here. Some of you will ask, sir, why is this particular demand declining like this? The reason for that is, have a look at this. Whenever the price increases, it will have an impact on the purchasing power. This is the first reason. Okay, it will definitely have an impact on the purchasing power. Let me take a simple example to exhibit this. Imagine you have 100 rupee. Using 100 rupee, you want to purchase a particular commodity whose cost today is 20 rupees per unit. So within 100 rupee at 20 rupee per unit, how many units of this particular product can you purchase? 5. And if you keep the same amount, 100, but the price has increased to 25 rupees, how many units can you purchase using the same 100 at 25 rupees now? 5 units. So when the price increases, the quantity that you can purchase, right, within the same amount of money will become lower and lower. You will be able to purchase lesser and lesser quantity with the rise in the price. So price is increasing, demand is coming down, right? So you can have the opposite movement, right? You can observe the opposite movement here itself, right? So this is one reason. That is, when price changes, demand will change in opposite direction. Second reason is people will start substituting. Is it okay? People will start substituting this particular product with another product. Means what? Let's take a very simple example here. You are purchasing product A, product B. Both are giving you same amount of a satisfaction. But if the price of the product A rises, is it okay? Price of the product A rises up like this, it will become costly for you. Now you'll simply say, why should I purchase a product A now? More and more, I will purchase product B. For a simple reason, both of them are giving me same amount of a satisfaction. So price of A increases, I will reduce the consumption of A. Rather, I'll start consuming more and more of B. So demand for A will come down, demand for B will increase. That will what will happen, right, when the price of the product changes like this. And the third one is law of diminishing marginal utility. What is this law of diminishing marginal utility? First and foremost, utility refers to usefulness of a particular product. For example, I will purchase food. Does food have certain usefulness to me? Yes. I will purchase water from the market. Does it have any usefulness to me? Yes. I will purchase fuels from the market. Is it having any usefulness to me? Yes. So the idea of a utility is a product having certain usefulness for the consumer or the buyer in the market. First point. Second point, as we keep on consuming the same product again and again, understand the logic here. As we keep on consuming the same product again and again, the usefulness, right, per unit of consumption will keep on decreasing. Under the concept of a law of diminishing marginal utility, it basically states that as we keep on consuming more and more units or consecutive units of the same product, the usefulness that we derive out of the product will keep on declining. That is, in case of utility, there is one principle, that is a cardinal utility. Again, all of these are very detailed discussions, right? In simple terms, cardinal utility is quantifying, giving certain quantity representation to the usefulness. For example, imagine I will have a cup of coffee. How much utility I derive out of this, or how much usefulness does this cup of quantity give me? I'll provide it in the form of numbers. Let's say for every cup of coffee I'm drinking first, I will get utility of 10 units. Second cup of coffee, I will not be deriving usefulness of 10, rather I'll be deriving usefulness of 8 units. Third cup of coffee, I'll be deriving 5 units of usefulness. Fourth cup of coffee, I'll be deriving, let's say, 2 units of usefulness. And why does this happen? It happens for a simple reason. Before consuming the first cup of coffee, the intensity of the demand for this particular coffee unit will be very, very high. But first unit of coffee is consumed. Now I know how much satisfaction I will derive. Hence, as I keep on consuming more and more units of the same product, consecutively if I keep on consuming, right, the usefulness that I derive will keep on declining. This is called as law of diminishing marginal utility. Now, understand this. As per law of diminishing marginal utility, as the utility derived will keep on declining like this, the willingness of the buyer to pay the same price will also decrease. Is it okay? I'll repeat it again. As per law of diminishing marginal utility, as we keep on consuming the same product, right, that is consecutively, units of the same product are consumed like this, the usefulness or the utility derived will keep on decreasing. And because there is a declining utility like this, the willingness to pay the same price will also come down. And that is the precise reason this law states that during this particular period of time, when the willingness will come down, the money or the price that is charged by the seller will have to be decreased. So when the price comes down, the consumer is willing to pay right, the same price, that is the declined price, and continue to consume this particular product all over again. Is the logic okay here? I'll put everything in a nutshell. Follow this very carefully. As per law of diminishing marginal utility, as consecutive units of the same product are consumed, utility derived will keep on declining. Hence, the seller will have to reduce the price so that the consumer will be able to purchase the product at a lower price. Now, when the prices will come down, the consumer will pay the price, that is the lower price, and continue to consume the product. Right? So, when the price has come down, what will happen to demand? Demand will start increasing or rising up like this. So, these are the reasons why you will see that there is a negative relation or inverse relation between the price as well as the demand. And please be very, very careful. In this case of a law of demand, move from the price to demand. Do not go from demand to price. You tend to make a mistake. Again, if you know how to go from the demand to price, please do that. But generally, when we use the law of demand, we say that if price comes down, demand goes up. And when the price rises, demand will fall. This is the reverse correlation or negative relation that exists between price and demand. Now you will say that, sir, anyways, price is coming down, demand is increasing or demand is rising. I'll read it like this: demand rises up and the prices go down. No, that is wrong. Because please understand the sequence here. The price goes down, hence the demand goes up. I can understand this. The price goes down and the demand goes up. Right, that is a concept of a dependent variable and independent variable, right? So in this particular example, the price goes down as a result of that. Because the prices are going down, the demand is going up. I can understand this, right? So do not go from demand to price. If you know how to write it, use it. Otherwise, right, simply start from the price, then shift it to the demand. So in case of law of demand, price falls, demand rises. Price rises, demand falls. And that is the precise reason I have written this particular table here. When the price is rising, demand is actually falling. So what I'm doing is, for a particular product, what is the price, right? Different price levels. And what is the demand at different price levels? What does it represent? In Indian economy, for a particular commodity, when the price is 10 rupee, right, overall demand will be at 40 units. When price is 15 rupee, the demand is 34 units. Price 20, demand 30. Price 24, demand 21. Right? This is right, the table which represents the price and demand for various commodities. In this particular graphical representation, in economics, generally what we do is we will draw the price variables, or let's say price parameters, along y-axis, and quantity, that is the demand for a particular product, along the x-axis. Now, some of you who are from economics background, right, I'm pretty sure you've come across this particular doubt earlier, and you will continue to have this particular doubt if I do not resolve it. Generally, in case of statistics, okay, purely in statistics, so what we do is, whenever we draw x and y axis like this, whatever is the independent variable, we'll plot it along the x-axis. Whatever is the dependent variable, we'll plot it along the y-axis. Right? That is, in this particular situation, right, price is an independent variable. Is it okay? Remember this. Price is an independent variable and demand is a dependent variable. Now, some of you will say, sir, what do you mean by independent and dependent variable? The demand is changing based on the price changes. Is the logic okay? The demand changes because there is a change in the price. So, whatever is the demand, it is affected, it is dependent on the price in the market. So, whatever is the demand, because it is affected by the price, it is a dependent variable. Is it okay? It is a dependent variable. Price is an independent variable. Purely in statistics, whatever is the independent variable, will plot it along x-axis, and whatever is the dependent variable, will plot it along the y-axis. But in economics, we do not follow this particular rule, because starting right from the beginning itself, this classification or this kind of representation has been followed, and we are continuing the same representation. That is, in case of the demand curve, supply curve, etc. In case of economics, we are going to draw the dependent variable along the x-axis and independent variable along the y-axis. That is, a price will be along the y-axis, and the quantity demanded for a particular product will be drawn along the x-axis. Now, have a look at this. Price is a 10 rupee. Demand will be 40 units. Let's plot it, right? So, imagine these are the different quantities of the products which are being demanded. 21 units, 30 units, 34 units, 40 units, etc. Right? Obviously, the graph will continue like this. I've taken only four numbers here, right? And at 21 units of demand for a particular product, the price will be 24 rupees. Okay. And later at 20 rupees, there is one more. 15 rupees, there is one more. And at 10 rupees, there is one more. So what I've done is, I have basically derived certain coordinates based on what is the demand as well as the price for a particular commodity. I will connect all of these particular coordinates or the dots. What I get is the demand curve. Is it okay? What I get is a demand curve. Is it okay? I hope you understand how do we draw the demand curve. First, we find out at different price levels, how much is the demand for the good in the market. Is it okay? Right, at 20 rupees, how much is the demand? 15 rupees, how much is the demand? At 25 rupees, how much is the demand? At 40 rupees, how much is the demand? We get the connection between the price as well as the demand, and then we plot it in the graph and connect all of these particular dots. The line that we get is called as the demand curve, and it essentially means at 15 rupees per unit of this particular product, the demand for or the quantity demanded for this particular product will be 34 units. At 24 rupees per unit, the demand for the quantity will be 21 rupees. Done. This is a concept of law of demand. Next one is law of supply. Now, in the beginning, I've told you law of demand discusses from the consumer or the buyer side in the market. Law of supply discusses from the seller side in the market. Now, in the same way that we have discussed in case of law of demand, there are factors which will determine the supply of certain commodities in the market. That is, the factors such as price of the commodity, price of the related goods, price of raw material, taxation imposed by the government, technology cost that is incurred by the company, etc. There are so many factors which will determine how much will be the supply of goods and services in the market. Now, at this particular point of time, we'll use the same concept, ceteris paribus, to define the law of supply. Ceteris paribus essentially means keeping all the other factors unchanged. Is it okay? There are so many factors listed here. Keeping all these particular factors unchanged, if I change the price of the commodity only, then what will happen in case of law of supply? Okay, so law of supply states that if all the other factors being equal, that is unchanged, the price of the commodity changes, then the quantity supplied will also change. And the connection between the price and quantity supplied now will be positive. Is it okay? Will be positive. In simple terms, as the price of the commodity rises up in the market, the quantity supplied of the commodity will also rise up. Is the logic okay? I'll repeat it again. In case of a law of demand, again, do not get confused here. Law of demand, consumers, buyers. Law of supply, suppliers, producers. In case of a law of demand, if all the factors remain unchanged and price changes, the quantity demanded will change in opposite direction. Whereas in case of a law of a supply, keeping all the other factors unchanged, if the price of the product changes, then the quantity supplied will move in the same direction. There is a positive relation between price and supply in case of a law of supply. There is a negative relation between price and demand in law of demand. Now, why does it happen? It happens for a simple reason. If every factor remains constant, that is raw material cost same, cost of technology same, GST imposed by the government same, right? Cost of labor same, cost of related goods same. If everything remains the same, unchanged, and the price of the commodity that you are supplying in the market increases, your profit margins will start increasing. You are going to earn more and more now. So will you increase the supply or decrease the supply in this particular situation? You will increase the supply of this particular commodity in the market. Done? So that is the law of supply here. And same thing like that we have done in case of a law of demand. What we do is, what is the price of the commodity, and at different levels, how much is the supply of the commodity. If I basically plot it, let's assume price is 10 rupee, supply was 20 units, price increased to 12 rupee, supply jumped up to 30 units, further increased to let's say 15 rupee, 45 units, 17 rupee, right, 60 units. What I'll do is, same idea, quantity of the commodity is supplied. Is it okay? How much quantity is supplied? how much is the price. Let's plot it. At a price 10 rupee, or let's start from x-axis here. At a 20 units, at a supply of 20 units, what is the price of the commodity? Let's say 10 rupee. So I will plot, right? This will be the first point. Second, at a 30 units, right? How much will be the price now? Price will be 12 rupee. At a 45 units, how much will be the price? 15 rupee. At 60 units, right? How much is the price? 17 rupee. So these are the points which I have derived. I will connect all of these particular points. The line which connects all of these particular dots is basically the supply curve. Is that okay? This is referred to as supply curve. So on one side, you have a law of a demand, using which you will derive the demand curve, which is downward sloping. And on the other hand, you have a law of a supply, using which you derive a curve which is upward sloping, called as a supply curve. Right? So this is the basic application of a law of a demand as well as a law of supply.